So the Government of Canada is actively examining action on short-term rentals. And in the city of Toronto, we actually have our own short-term rentals when it comes to websites like Airbnb, VRBO. And the city is currently thinking of different ways to implement the rules. I'm Michael Ouzas. I'm a realtor in the Greater Toronto area. If you ever want to book in a call with me, click on that first link in the description down below. And I'd love to hear your thoughts when it comes to short-term rentals in Canada and in the city of Toronto. So we'll start out on stories.com, then we'll head to the city of Toronto's website to see the difference between what Canada's thinking of doing and what is currently existing here in Toronto. So the Government of Canada actively examining action on short-term rentals. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland commenced BC's new legislation against illegal short-term rentals on platforms such as Airbnb and VRBO. You can read through this entire article on stories.com, but it says, we know that short-term rentals through sites like Airbnb and VRBO mean fewer homes for Canadians to rent and live in full-time, especially in urban and populated areas of our country. This is where our government is actively examining what options and tools exist at the federal level to ensure more short-term rentals are made available as long-term rentals as permanent homes for Canadians to live in. Freeland also mentioned that the Government of Canada will have more to announce in weeks to come. So this came a day after the province of British Columbia announced the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, which included a suite of actions such as creating a provincial registry for platforms and hosts, increasing fines for infractions, and requiring platforms to share more data. So with the announcement, BC joined a growing list of governments around North America that are cracking down on short-term rentals in the name of alleviating pressures on the respecting housing markets. The list also includes Barcelona, Vienna, New York City, and in Canada, both Quebec and Halifax also announced different actions as well. They want to say that housing is a very challenging issue for Canadians, and they believe that the core challenge is that there just aren't enough homes available for people to buy and for people to rent. So they're reviewing the space and thinking what can they do in both the medium term and immediately to relieve some of the pressure. An estimated 30,000 units of housing could be added back into the market in just Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal if the action were to be taken. In Ontario, there's a few different ways you can rent out your property, and it depends on the city that you live in. In Toronto, we do have rental restrictions when it comes to short-term rentals. The other thing to note in major cities is that a city like Toronto has many professionals coming to the city for shorter periods of time. If you're an athlete, for example, we have 4 major sports teams here in the city. You may be looking for a property for only 6 to 8 months at a time. That could sometimes pose a challenge when it comes to renting a property here in the city of Toronto. These short-term rentals, such as Airbnb, are still not super cheap when it comes to that option. However, they do provide housing for those looking for fully furnished, all-inclusive rentals. If you go to the City of Toronto website, it says 10 things you should know about short-term rentals. There is a meeting being held on October 26, 2023 to discuss these current rules and what they would implement afterwards. Short-term rentals must be registered with the City of Toronto, and if someone's booking a short-term rental, they should check to make sure the city-issued registration number is included in the listing or advertisement. Do not rent short-term rentals that do not display this registration number. They must be someone's principal residence. This is the home people stay in, an address they use for bills, identification, taxes, and insurance. There should be no discrimination on who can rent the property, and they cannot refuse service to any persons with disability. Your host must provide you with the contact information of a person available during your rental, and you should receive a diagram of all exits from the building where your short-term rental is located. Be a good neighbor, respect the rules around noise, parking, garbage, and recycling. You can also call 311 if you notice that the short-term rental is operating without registration, not being used as principal residence, unsafe, making a nuisance, or for other non-emergencies, and call 911 only for emergencies such as reporting a fire, reporting a crime, or for emergency medical assistance. I just wanted to point out those 10 things you should know about short-term rentals for the city. The one that stands out of those 10 rules is the principal residence component, and that's something to note as it applies to any Airbnb here in the city of Toronto. So this is what they're proposing for the October 26th meeting, and basically there are a few changes that they want to add to the short-term rental bylaw. They want to strengthen the primary residence requirement by improving company licensing and operator registration standards. They want to enhance advertising and data sharing requirements for short-term rental companies to support the city's compliance and auditing efforts. They're looking to introduce additional measures to curtail rental activity by unregistered operators, clarify definitions to make it easier for operators to understand and comply with the bylaw, and potential updates to the program's fee structure. And that's something that stands out to me because there is a fee structure already put in place by the platforms, and if the city is charging an extra tax on top of that, we might not see any of these rentals whatsoever because it might not be profitable anymore. And the other element that was not not mentioned in that 10-point bullet form is that rentals that are 28 days or longer are not covered under the short-term rental bylaw. So under 28 days is the short-term rental rule here in the city of Toronto. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about the current state of the short-term rental market, either in Canada or in the city of Toronto. If you're not in Toronto, I'd love to hear what you're seeing in the city that you currently live in. I'm Michael Ouzas. Thanks for watching.